Hello, football fans in Hamilton from coast to coast and around the world. This is the fifth quarter show on YouTube. The chat already active, email streaming in, social media feed is rocking and rolling. After what was a disappointing final score, it seemed to be a reverse to what was going on previously in this season. Ticats lose tonight. Their rocket and rolling 4-game winning streak is over. Winnipeg's 7-game run has been now propelled to 8. And if there was ever a time in this 2024 Tiger Cat season, that season is today, hanging by a thread. At least the playoff chances for this team hanging by a thread. We're going to talk about tonight's game, vote for our player of the game. And my big question today is, where's your brain at in terms of this team somehow winning the last 2 games of the regular season and then hoping that Toronto loses at least 2 of their last 3. And for the actually Toronto's going to lose all Toronto's going to lose all 3 of their games because they're 4 points up on the Tiger Cats. So they have to lose. They're on the bye week this week. They have to lose next week at Winnipeg, lose at home to Ottawa. The Red Blacks clinching a playoff spot with Hamilton's loss tonight. And then Toronto closes out the season in Edmonton. I'm not holding out hope. It does not look good. And tonight's game really has no bearing on where my brain is at. I think, especially in the first half, it was a coulda, woulda, shoulda type of game for the Tiger Cats. Tim White on a long bomb, surefire TD, could not haul it in. And then obviously did not catch what would have been another touchdown to potentially get even closer to the Blue Bombers before halftime. Did not get it done in 2 big instances. 3 turnovers tonight for the Tiger Cats. Not good. 2 interceptions by Bo Levi, a fumble by Taylor Powell. Too many penalties tonight. I know, Hamilton had some undisciplined penalties, which you never want to see. 7 infractions tonight for 107 yards. 3 penalties for Winnipeg for 25. And first downs weren't even close. Winnipeg had 24, Hamilton had 12. And so now it's 6-10. I think we're all comfortable in saying the Boverall era or phenomenon is now done. It was really fun while it lasted. There's no doubt about that. And that way he and the players had a lot of fun with it too. But it's done. And probably much like the Ticats playoff chances, I think, if I'm being honest, I think they're done. I'd love to see this team win the last 2 and Toronto lose their last 3. That would be an amazing story. Given the opposition Toronto faces, I don't see that happening. Who's your player of the game tonight? Mine is, I was thinking about picking a Tiger Cat, and Keandre Smith would probably be my only pick for the Tiger Cats, but I cannot pick a Tie Cat tonight. It's got to be Brady Oliveira. Holy Mackinac, this guy was unbelievable. I mean, Winnipeg's offensive line just dominated Hamilton's D-line. 24 carries, 147 rushing yards for Brady Oliveira, and a touchdown. In the 2 games that Winnipeg played against Hamilton, both wins, 26-23, back in a couple weeks before Labor Day, 31-10 tonight for Winnipeg. Brady Oliveira has 267 rushing yards against Hamilton in 2 games. That's crazy. That is crazy. All right, there's a link in the chat. Click on that link. You'll get put in the waiting room. We'll bring you on the show. It's not going to be as fun as past shows, that is for sure. We know whenever the team does not play up to par and certainly gets the boots put to them, it's not as fun. But let's get through it. John in the chat says, this game was awful tonight. I thought we had a chance to make the playoffs, but this game makes me question everything. Harley says, when you're a diehard Tiger Cats fan, it's hard to see this, especially when you're the Cats are trying to fight for a playoff spot. Aaron says Timmy needs to go, in reference to Tim White. Steven says, rather than player of the game voting, could we vote on who do we build around for 2025? Certainly we can have that discussion. I think this is the first of what might be 3 consecutive fifth quarter shows on YouTube in which we talk about next season, like in earnest, about who should be around and who do you want to keep and who do you want to let go. And Randy in the chat says a disappointing loss, but we had a good streak going. And right below Randy's comment, you'll see the link for the fifth quarter show with myself. Click on that link. You'll be able to join the show via your phone, your laptop, your tablet. You can also email fifthquartershow@gmail.com. That's 5th fifthquartershow@gmail.com. And you can join us that way. Of course, we're taking your votes for player of the game as well. Well, he's joined us for a few weeks in a row, and we're going to add him to the stage once again, and that is Big Ticats fan. Big Ticats fan, a big loss for the Ticats tonight. What'd you think?
Yep, that was a tough one. That was, and I do got to agree with you. No game ball for the Ticats, obviously. It goes to Oliveira. That guy had her number all season with the 2 games. I thought it was going to be a hard battle. Like, even I was expecting a loss, but I wasn't expecting a loss like this. I was expecting a win more than anything, but I was like, if we lose, it's going to be slim, but not like this. That was just like, a knife to a heart tonight.
It certainly was. And, this team was in it right from the get-go. That Tim White drop, what would have been a touchdown, would have changed the entire complexion of the game.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that. There was 2 passes by him. The one that came and hit him in his hands, it's like, in those gloves they wear, come on. I'm a sports fan. I like to throw around the football, and I bought gloves like those before. And it's like, how do you drop a ball like that with sticky gloves? I can understand back in the day when there was no gloves like that. Yeah. Okay, that's a tough one, but he should have had that one, especially with those gloves. They give you so much more than of advantage to catching balls like that. But no, that was tough. I'm not gonna lie, that was really tough. And but hey, mathematically we're still in it. Mm-hmm. But in reality, and as much as I am a diehard Ticats fan, I just don't see it. And we are now hitting 25 years, a quarter century without a Grey Cup. Now we know what it's like to feel like the Blue Bombers when they went 30 years.
That's right. So, yeah, they went 29 years before they beat Hamilton.
Yeah, and, twice.
Twice. Twice in 3 years. Yeah. So are you throwing in the towel? Are you thinking it there? What percentage of you believes this team can still make the playoffs? Because we're going to need a lot of help from Toronto.
I'm not throwing in the towel yet. Like I said, when you're a diehard fan, you can't throw in the towel yet, especially when we're still mathematically in it. Right. But I'm going to say 50-50 because it's the CFL. It's unpredictable. We're a small league, but we're a great league, and anything can happen. No lead is safe.
That is true. Good point. Big Ticats fan, thanks for joining us as always. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
That is a big Ticats fan joining us here on the fifth quarter show on YouTube. You can join as well. Let me just post the link one more time in the chat. I almost called it lick. Link has been reposted in the chat. If you're just joining us here on the fifth quarter show on YouTube, you can chime in on email as well. fifthquartershow@gmail.com, 5th fifthquartershow@gmail.com. It is Alan from St. Catharines. Hi, Rick. What happened tonight? This just shows the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think we make the playoffs. We had a chance before, but to score only 10 points for the whole game, we're just not ready for the playoffs. We do have a lot of good pieces to this team, but losing Shamar Bridges and then losing this game shows me that we're still a long ways away to a playoff team. At least I don't have to stress over Ticats next month. I can stress over Leaf hockey instead, and Buffalo Bills don't look too bad. Player of the game, the fans, for showing up tonight thinking we had a chance. Well, there was 22,000 plus. At least that was the announced crowd at Tim Hortons Field tonight. And, they were boisterous in the first half. And then I think the reality of the game kind of set in. Jarek on X says, yep, changed the game. That was a must catch. Reference to Tim White's drop. And his wife on X says, I really want Team Boverall to make this happen. Well, did not happen for the Boveralls tonight. The run is over. And Tiger Sammy on X at Rick Zamperin is the handle, by the way. Hashtag fifth quarter. S'il vous plaît. Winnipeg are too good of a team to let chances like they did in the first half slip. Tim White dropped TD and second dropped interception, and this could have been a completely different game. Beaten by a better team. Not over yet, but playoffs out of our hands. Player of the game, Keandre Smith. And listen, Keandre Smith had a good game today. Made some quality catches. 6 receptions for 54 yards. Let's go through some of the stats now that I'm looking at it. Bo Levi Mitchell, not a typical Bo Levi Mitchell game, but get a load of this. And I asked Bo about this and head coach Scott Milanovich at practice earlier on this week. And I said, listen, the previous game against Winnipeg, it was the only game in which Bo Levi failed to throw for at least 240 yards. In fact, he threw for 220 against Winnipeg. And the only team he did not throw a touchdown. His only start, then he not throw a touchdown pass against Winnipeg. And that happened again tonight. 15 of 28, 217 passing yards, 0 TDs, 2 interceptions. James Butler had a great touchdown run. 7 carries, 24 yards, 1 TD. 18 of those 24 yards came on that touchdown. He was literally a non-factor for most of the game. Keandre Smith, 6 receptions, 54 yards. Tim White, 4 catches, 50 yards. Boy, if he had 2 more for 2 TDs, this game is completely different. Maybe we're talking about this team some way, somehow getting into the playoffs. Brennan O'Leary Orange, 2 catches, 86 yards. Stephen Dunbar Jr., 2 for 34. Butler, 2 for 16. Desmond Patman, 1 catch for 7 yards. And Giovanni Robinson had 1 for 2. And defensively, Will Sunderland and Ray Wilborn, as well as Baker, all with 6 defensive tackles. Richard Leonard also with 5. And I think it was Barlow with the only sack of the night for Hamilton. Yeah. 1 sack for Hamilton. Winnipeg had 2, and Winnipeg wins this ball game 31-10. Let's go back to the chat here. And again, there is a link in the chat. You can click that and join me here on the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube. John says, I think there are some keepers we keep for 2025, and we need to start looking at what we have. And Aaron responds with anyone other than Tim White. And do we keep the price tag of Butler when we have Greg Bell and Ante Litre? I think it's quite clear that as great of a guy as James Butler is, and as big of a fan favorite as James Butler is, and he is, I think his time in Hamilton is coming to an end at the end of this season. I think he was kept around as insurance, and good thing they did because Greg Bell gets injured. Trade deadline was earlier this week. Not much movement. Certainly the Ticats didn't make any moves. I don't think Butler's back here in Hamilton. I really don't. I think Greg Bell is going to be the guy. The Crimson Meteor says, are we out for blood tonight? I'm not sure we're out for blood tonight. I think we just come to the realization, at least I have, that I think this was it. I think this was the game that the Ticats really needed to have. If they win this game, it's 5 in a row. They're 7-9. They're 2 points back at Toronto. Certainly, the Argos still have a game in hand. But now, you're still 4 points back of Toronto. You need the Argos to lose their last 3 games, and Hamilton has to win their last 2. And I certainly think Hamilton can still win their last 2 games. They have the bye week, then they host Calgary, and then they finish off the season in Ottawa. I think, those games are probably winnable. Calgary's going to be done. Ottawa's in the playoffs. They're going to be resting guys. It's the week before the playoffs begin. I think the Ticats probably win their last 2. The trouble is, I don't think Toronto's losing their last 3, if that makes sense. On email, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. The number 5th, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Randy emails in, good evening, Rick. A home game is always the best for Hamilton. The streak may be over, but it was great feeling during those 4 games. To go from 2-9 to 6-9 was a booster shot. As we see this playoff year slipping away, I can only wonder what might have been without the slow start. Yet, there were positives. Tonight, they just did not have enough. A miracle, and mathematically is what Hamilton needs. This was evident without Shamar Bridges. Not an easy night for Bo Levi Mitchell. Great coverage on the Ticat Audio Network. I could not see the TV till the last quarter. Although a difficult one to pick in the loss, my player of the game is Keandre Smith. Some good catches early on. Even though the loss, I look forward to the next game. The fifth quarter will help. Have a good weekend, Rick Randy in Oakville. Couple votes for Keandre Smith, one for the fans and two for Brady Oliveira, the all-star running back who may have just run back into and maybe in the lead of the most outstanding player conversation. In my opinion, might be the guy now. Andrew says it was going to end eventually in reference to the Boverall phenomenon. I would like to see it go at least one more week. That would have been a lot of fun. Douglas on X, use the hashtag fifth quarter. The handle is at Rick Zamperin. Could still catch the Riders technically, who are 7-7-1, but Riders would have to lose all 3 games left. So the Saskatchewan Roughriders have 15 points. And yes, Hamilton with a couple of wins would surpass Saskatchewan, but are they going to lose all 3 of their games? Well, let's look at Saskatchewan's schedule here coming up. They're at Edmonton tomorrow night. I don't know if they're losing that game. They're hosting BC. The Lions could very well win that. And then Saskatchewan is closing out the season at home against Calgary. I can't see the Riders going 0-3. I'd love to see it, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And Jim on X says, Sigh, well, Rick, the streak was fun while it lasted. Dropped passes, dropped interceptions, and some inexcusable clock management before the half. Both of Winnipeg's lines dominated in the second half. Smith for player of the game. This just isn't our year again. And with an eye roll emoji for good measure. All right, let's get back to the chat because that has been flooded with commentary. Civil Defense Canada in with a comment. What we saw today is what you will see the rest of the season. This team is bad. Good teams make them look bad. Bo is not the real deal. More bad throws. Where is the MOP talk now? LOL. I think every player is entitled to a bad game now and again. I mean, Zach Caleros has had bad games this year. Brady Oliveira's had bad games this year. Guys are going to have up and down games. They're not going to be outstanding every game, even though at the end, one of these guys is probably going to win most outstanding player. John says, it was frustrating, Rick. It's time to rebuild for next year and see what we have and who we need to get rid of. Civil Defense Canada with player of the game, Bernie Custis. Yeah, you know what? Congratulations to Bernie Custis and Mike Walker. I was at the Wall of Honor dinner last night at Michelangelo's. Big thanks to Ernie Catarini for having me out, and the Ticats Alumni Association for having, not only myself, my wife was there as well, and she had a great time. And what an awesome event it was, because not only were they honoring Bernie Custis and Mike Walker for enshrinement or induction of the Wall of Honor, but there was 30-plus alumni there at Michelangelo's, and it was amazing. Everyone from Leo Ezrins to Ben Zambiazzi, who you saw as the alumnus of distinction tonight at Tim Hortons Field, to obviously Mike Walker was there. The niece and nephew of Bernie Custis were in attendance. Hitch and Moriali were there. Garney Henley was there. Bob Kraus. I mean, you name it, they were there. It was an incredible get together. So great on Civil Defense Canada for nominating Bernie Custis as player of the game. Amanda says, where was the team that got on the plane in BC? Player of the game are the fans that came out, unfortunately, for a loss. John says, Tim White missing the bomb really hurt our chances. John, you're right. That was a huge drop. He catches that. We might be talking about a win because that was a massive play. Bo to Tim connecting with a big 7 points. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. The whole first half really was almost a coulda, woulda, shoulda. Anthony says that was brutal. John says losing Simone Lawrence this year hurt us on defense. Boy, did it ever. I mean, not only that, but Teddy Laurent, I know a little longer in the tooth, not as healthy as he was in his earlier stage in his career. That's understandable. The guy took a beating, being double teamed almost every play. But losing those two guys in particular, that's a lot of experience. It's a lot of leadership. That's a lot of big plays when it matters, not being on the field, having such a young, such a green and experienced defense at the start of the season, that whole month, really first 2 months, Not good. Not good for the defense, not good for the team. Sam says, how many times do I have to watch Tim White drop the ball? Well, hopefully that's the last time, Sam. Hopefully that is the last time. The Crimson Meteor adds, how do you get sacked twice, then throw an interception and keep your job? My guess is in reference to Bo. He had a couple of interceptions tonight, and he got sacked a couple of times. Well, sometimes when he gets sacked, it's the offensive line as well. Or sometimes it's not the receivers getting open and you're hanging onto the ball too long. It's more than just the quarterback, that is for sure. And John also says Tim White not worth his contract. Who's your player of the game? I voted for Brady Oliveira. I thought he was just absolutely fantastic tonight. 24 carries, 147 yards, 1 touchdown as the Blue Bombers beat the Tiger Cats 31-10. Hamilton now on the bye week. Then we'll host Calgary on Friday, October the 18th. That'll obviously be our next show, but really needs a lot of help. Needs Toronto to lose out, needs Saskatchewan to lose out if they want to get the crossover playoff spot. I really don't see both or either of those scenarios kind of playing out. Never know, but I don't want to bet on that for sure. LJ on email, fifthquartershow@gmail.com is the email address, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. LJ says, good night, Irene. It was a nice run, though. We really missed the guys that were out with injury. Maybe a miracle can still happen, but doesn't look good. Thanks for continuing this show. LJ on email. You can also click the link in the chat. If it is disappeared or you don't see it, let me know and I will repost it in that chat. And again, you can also email fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Let's get to just another email. There are a few that are popping in, but this one's from Val, who says, well, what can you say about this game? Maybe totally disgusting, lackluster, and no effort game with too many penalties. As far as player of the game, to me, the only one who appeared to do his job was Constantine. I think he means Constantino. Other than that, stink bombs. Val from Halifax. Val, thanks for tuning in from the Fax, or Halifax, however you want to say it. Awesome City was there last summer and had a whale of a time. Brian says, sorry, Rick, but it's going to be a hate-on BLM tonight, Bo Levi Mitchell, and I'd be willing to bet that Milanovic starts Powell next week. If you put the ball in your best receiver's hands at critical times, they have to do their job. He didn't, and we paid the price. Well, I will say that Bo Levi hit Tim White in the hands for a deep, long ball. And, I mean, that's going to be interesting, especially if the Ticats and by a couple of weeks from now, if Toronto and Saskatchewan both lose their next game and Hamilton's still mathematically in it, it's going to be interesting to see who Scott Milanovic does start at quarterback. Is it Bo Levi, the guy that for the last 4 weeks prior to this game virtually, helped will this team to victories with some great fourth quarter or overtime heroics, was throwing for 300 or near 300 yards a game, big touchdowns, not making many mistakes? Or does Coach Milanovic say, you know what, the possibilities just aren't there. Let's now start the Powell era. I don't know what the answer is. I think if I'm the head coach, I'm still starting the guy that's going to give me the best chance to win. Right now, I just think that's Bo Levi. Taylor Powell didn't come on the field and electrify the audience. I just think Bo is still the guy at this point. Douglas on X at Rick Zamperin is the handle. Use the hashtag fifth quarter. Looking now, the Ticats paths are 1, must win out. 2, Argos or Riders must lose out. The latter without the Elks winning out. Douglas, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And Jeff says, a team that read its own press clippings, that was absolutely pathetic. The game plan was crap, as was the execution. If the DBs in white could catch, this might have been a winnable game. Hey, Ticats, for pissing off on a Friday night, I wonder why I still bother. Player of the game, nobody. So Jeff clearly not happy with how this game transpired and how the Ticats did not bring their A game tonight. I think that's a fair statement. They did not bring their A game tonight. David says, send Tim White packing. That was his worst game this season. John says, I would sign Shamar Bridges and a healthy Luther Hakunavanu is my choice over Tim White. And I know some people have been asking about Luther Hakunavanu. And it was a couple of weeks ago when I was asking the question about, what is his status for the rest of the season? Is he gone? Is there potential for him to come back? And I was told that probably within the last couple of weeks of the season, he might be able to come back. He might be healthy enough to come back to the field. I'd love to see it because he was having a pretty good season just before he got hurt. The Crimson Meteor back in the chat says, I remember being jealous of other teams for having Bo. Now I want him gone. John says the fans showing up and almost selling out, apparently, player of the game. Another vote for the fans, who are now tied with Keandre Smith. And Brady Oliveira has a couple of votes as well. You can click the link on the chat. You can also email fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Vote for your player of the game. Talk about tonight's game. Are you still believing that this Ticats team can get it done? Let's go back to the email. Philly Filski is gracing us with his presence on email tonight. And Philly Filski writes, well, that was quite painful to watch. The great Caleros gets the last laugh again on his former team, for all intents and purposes, extinguishing any little playoff hope Tiger Cats had left. Pfft, gone. I was only able to watch part of the game, but it seemed to me there was a lack of urgency displayed by the players. Most disappointing of a disappointing lot of players was Tim White. You would think with their best receiver, Shamar Bridges, out, he would step it up and be a difference maker and earn his big dough. But nope, he fizzled out like a wet firecracker. Philly Filski goes on to write, I also did not help that it looked like the Bomber offensive line were holding on virtually every play and never got called. But that's nothing new to anyone that has watched them play this year and last year, as a matter of fact. But that's another topic in and of itself. Now that the impossible playoff dream is basically over, it's time to dismantle this Hamilton organization from top down, starting with Orlando Steinauer, whose epic failures I have commented on before. Next is Ed Hervey. For the love of me, I cannot understand in the first place why they hired him, given his controversial controversial past with Edmonton and BC. Bring in some new faces, new vision, rebuild the team, and pull them out of the murky swamp. Fans of Hamilton deserve a winner. Splendid show you have. Take care. That email from Philly Filski. Back to the chat. More new comments coming in. Let me just scroll up just a wee bit. B. Gross says, brutal performance. Anthony says, doesn't Toronto have to lose 2 of 3 because we beat them in the season series? All right, so here is the standings. Let's just focus on the East right now. So Toronto right now, Ottawa's free and clear. We cannot catch the Ottawa Redblacks. They have clinched a playoff spot with tonight's Ticats loss. So Hamilton has 12 points, the maximum amount of points that the Tiger Cats can achieve right now with 2 games left, remember, hosting Calgary and then season ender in Ottawa, is 16. That's the maximum amount that the Tiger Cats can get. Toronto already has 16 points. So Toronto, to clinch a playoff spot, they just need to tie one of their last 3 games. Forget about winning it, just tie. So any amount of points that Toronto collects, Hamilton is done. For the BC Lions and the Rough Riders, so both of those teams are still catchable. Hamilton can still cross over. The likelihood, again, you got to remember that the team that is crossing over needs at least 1 more point than the third place team in the other division. Winnipeg's number 1. Hamilton cannot catch Winnipeg. They have clinched a home playoff game. They have 20 points. Saskatchewan is 15 points. Saskatchewan has 3 more games. And BC has 14 points. BC also has 3 more games. So while Hamilton can still catch both of those teams, again, they need 1 more point. Literally 1 more win, because a tie is pretty rare, even though we've had a couple of them this year. So that's basically where we stand with the Tiger Cats' chances of making the playoffs. Still possible. We've been throwing around the world mathematically. And that is very much true. This team is very still mathematically in. Realistically, though, that's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of help that this Ticats team did not get last weekend. Would have been nice if they got it, but it's going to be tough sledding for sure. Civil Defense Canada back in the chat. Need some better looks at the D-line and our backs. Mongoose and Peters are the only ones who are locked in. Paul says no D equals no win. Aaron says Mike Walker today would have been a better option at defensive tackle tonight. And the Crimson Meteor in the chat says, ref, you suck, which we heard mightily and loud and proud from the Ticats fans at Tim Hortons Field tonight. Click on the link in the chat to join me on the show. You can email fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Hit me up on X. The handle is @Rick Zamperin. Use the hashtag #fifthquarter. Joe on email, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Joe says, hi, Rick. Thanks for your show. Best part of the game was seeing the great Mike Walker go up on the wall of honor. Lots of drop balls, missed opportunities. Let's win the next two and hope for the best. Joey M. from Bright. Joe, appreciate you emailing the show. Another email in, this one from Stephen out in Penticton, BC. Greetings, Rick. Well, damn, Sam, that was stinkball. The Cats look like they just gave up after the half. Now we are not out of it, but it's all uphill from now. Disappointing. The bad penalties have returned. Bo looked bad, very bad. White has returned to dropping balls again, etc. To get punched out by Winnipeg like this is hard to take. Player of the game goes to the fans in the stands for sitting through this game. Regards, Stephen in Penticton. So the fans have 4 votes for player of the game. Keandre Smith is 3, and Brady Oliveira has a couple of votes. Hit me up on X. You can use the hashtag #fifthquarter, and I think I'm just getting trolled on X from Al, who has the freezing face emoji, because back on September 28th, I said, serious question, how did the Red Blacks win 8 games this season? And I was being serious because they have been playing over the last number of weeks. And so he's giving me the freezing face emoji, which I can take. I think it's well warranted from Al. Thank you, Al. Tim says, I agree. The D-line could not stop anything tonight. Usher was missed. Yeah, not having Nick Usher on the end. That was a big loss tonight. Tim Ward comes in, didn't really make any headway, didn't really make an impact. Barlow and Hendricks. Barlow did have a sack. Hendricks, didn't really make that big of an impact in terms of getting the quarterback. But again, man, that Winnipeg offensive line is really, really good. The Gnarled Branch says, player of the game, fans who attended the stinker, this team will be like this for many, many years until upper ups move on. The Tim White drop deflated the energy. Yeah, it certainly did. That was a massive drop. Gary in the chat says, Tim White did more than drop 2 touchdowns. He also whiffed on a block on O'Leary Orange's yak to the goal line. We needed him to step up, and he whiffed. Yep, I was watching that play develop, and I thought, Tim, you got to make the block. The Bombers defender had the angle, had the advantage, had the leverage, and got to O'Leary Orange and prevented the touchdown. And the very next play, hand off to Butler, and he loses 4 yards, and it's 2nd and goal from the 7. And Tim White drops the pass. They settle for the field goal. That's just a sum of what happened tonight for the Ticats. John says, to keep next season O-line, Bridges, Dunbar, Smith, maybe White for a lower price, Greg Bell, and Litre. Not a lot of guys on defense, unless you're coming back in the chat with a lot of defensive people to keep. Oh, here's the defensive list. Peters, Katzentonis, and Leonard. Then it really deteriorates at DB. On Night in the chat says, team is done. Nice run, but I just see them getting out of the hole now. Green 3R says, player of the game is you, Scott. Trade Butler, trade Powell, trade Tim White. Why are there no urinals in the men's bathrooms? Are we not men? Are there not urinals in the men's bathrooms? I've been to bathrooms at Tim Hortons Field. They have urinals. Maybe you're going to the wrong. Maybe you're in the women's bathroom. Maybe you're in the wrong bathroom. Chris says Winnipeg is the team to beat. I would agree with that. Winnipeg is playing they've won 8 in a row. They're 10-6. They are, between them, I guess Montreal, being the defending champs, you got to put them as the Eastern Division Grey Cup favorites, you would think. But hey, come playoff time, who knows? Maybe Ottawa catches fire. Maybe Toronto catches fire. And fingers crossed, maybe Hamilton somehow, some way gets into the playoffs and they catch fire as well. Chris goes on to say, Winnipeg looks like a Grey Cup team again for the 5th time in a row. And John says, bye-bye Figueroa. Maybe Tim White, not unless he takes a pay cut. I think our O-line has been solid overall, and they need to be kept intact. Big shout out to David Beard and his wife Vanessa for welcoming their fourth child, a son, last night, from what I understand. So big ups to the Beard family, and I hope mom and baby are doing well. On all accounts, they are. It's good to see that the Ticats family is growing. Too bad they don't have more to cheer about after tonight's game, a 31-10 loss at the hands of the Bombers. Cole Zoe on email, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. If you're just joining us, the link is in the chat. If you don't see the link, let me know and I will repost it. Cole Zoe on email says, I'm a longtime fan since the early 70s, and this team was pathetic tonight. You go into a game knowing if you win and if you lose, you're a loser. They chose to be losers. Just awful. Not sure how the caretaker keeps blowing money on this team. The only positive this season was the sweep of the Argos. I blame the coaching staff because they started the season with Mark Washington, whom I blame for at least 7 of the losses. He was a loser last season, and you brought him back for this season. Crazy and insane, says Cole Zoe. Thank you for the email. You can also email as well, fifthquartershow@gmail.com, or on X. Use the hashtag fifthquarter. The handle is @Rick Zamperin. Colton Mason, adding Tim White here on X didn't help Bo tonight, that's for sure, but thank God the Ticats paid him what he demanded. We couldn't lose games without him. Oof. That is a shots fired kind of comment. No doubt about that. Back to the chat here on the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube. And by the way, thank you everyone for tuning in and subscribing and telling your friends to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. Not sure we can make it, but hey, it's a goal that I'd like to hit by the end of the season. This comment from Green about the bathrooms again. Section 116, bathrooms all stalls. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know. I'll have to visit Section 116 and say, what's going on here? Chris says, Argos will beat Ottawa and Edmonton in their last 2 games. Too big of a hole for the Cats to dig out of. Harley says, when it rains, it pours in Hamilton, and not a good way. And Chris says, hey, Rick, great to see you using StreamYard, which I've used for the past 4 years. It's worked fantastic. Love it. Absolutely love it. Brendan says, if you haven't subscribed to Rick and liked this stream, you're either new to YouTube or needed a reminder. Well, thanks for the reminder. Yes, you can subscribe. It's free. There's not only the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube after every Ticats game, but every Tuesday, I do a sober second thoughts. I look back at the game, reveal some of the shortcomings or the highlights from the game, and just offer my views on a second glance at what happened on the gridiron. And then every Thursday, picks, props, and predictions. We know sports wagering is huge, so make a pick, a prop, and a prediction. I think this week I'm going 1-2. Not a good week. Last week it was 2-0. It was fantastic. John says, where was the pass rush all season? We need to reevaluate them. Yeah, this team, in terms of the pass rush, Mike Walker goes in the Wall of Honor tonight. One of the all-time great sack guys in the history of the Canadian Football League. And you look at the other names on that list. On the other side of that line, you had guys like Grover Covington, Dave Sauvé on that line. Joe Monford years later taking down quarterbacks. This team has had so many amazing D-line guys. You go back to the Mosca and Barrow days. Always had ferocious players in the D-line. And I think for the last number of years, we haven't had that explosive guy like a Willie Jefferson, who again made another big impact tonight for Winnipeg, and a guy who is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Ticats have not had a guy like that in a long, long time, and that's just too bad. Jack and the Beanstalker says BLM can't make up for all the drops, missed tackles, dumb penalties from his teammates. And that is very true. Bo Levi, I will say, though, had a very pedestrian game today. And I don't think this team really matches up well against Winnipeg. They score 23 points in their first loss back in week 12, lose 26-23 in a last-minute touchdown drive by Winnipeg. And tonight, only 10 points. And in both games, Bo Levi throws for under 220 and 0 touchdowns. He has not thrown a touchdown against Winnipeg this season. And tonight, again, a lackluster 15 of 28, 217 passing yards, 2 interceptions, nothing happening in the run game. James Butler, 7 carries, 24 yards, 1 touchdown. 18 of those 24 yards came on the touchdown run. And through the air, Keandre Smith, 6 catches, 54 yards. Tim White, 4 catches, 50 yards. And then you got to go to Brendan O'Leary Orange, who had 2 catches for 86. 71 came on that one just before the half. Not enough, not even too little too late. They didn't really have anything to write home about even at halftime. Not good enough. Not good enough tonight for the Tiger Cats, that is for sure. And that's too bad. Chris says, Mike O'Shea, coach of the year. I think that is a very distinct possibility. It also says Mike Walker, long overdue for Wall of Honor. Yeah, it took the Ticats a long time to recognize Mike Walker for a Wall of Honor induction. I think that was high time for him to get on there. That is for sure. He's one of the greats of all time on the D-line. Again, just reposting the link if you want to chat with me here on the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube. Link being reposted into the chat. Click on the link. You'll get in the waiting room, and I'll bring you on the show. This one from Sam. I don't think Ticats passed midfield in the second half. Yeah, you know what? You're probably right, Sam. I can't recall that happening. And if they did, it was just barely. Taylor Powell's fumble was just on the other side of midfield. So that was probably the only time that the Ticats were on that side of the field. And it's simply not good enough. Not good enough at all, especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot. You want to see some of that ferocity, some of that spirit, some of the mojo and the soul that this team has shown over the last 4 games. That come from behind win in BC was absolutely amazing. I don't know, maybe they just left too much on the field in BC. Maybe not having Shamar Bridges and Nick Usher and Greg Bell on the field was just too much for this team to recuperate from. Just a guess, but not a good effort tonight. That is for sure. Brendan says Tim White costed us not only tonight, but weeks 1 and 2 versus Calgary and Saskatchewan. And you're absolutely right. There's 3 ball games right there. Not saying they would have won all 3, but 3 games that would have been completely different. And maybe they win 2 of those 3. Maybe they just win 1, and they're in a much better standing going in to the stretch drive. Chris, thanks for the comment. Good show, Rick, as always. John says, please sign Bridges to a multi-year contract, Hamilton. I think that's got to be a must, unless Shamar wants to go somewhere else. And by all accounts, every time he's been in the media center at the podium talking to us, he's been phenomenal and really glowing about how much he likes Hamilton, how much he likes the room, how much he likes the coaching staff and the atmosphere and playing the Canadian game. So I think he's a big fan of the CFL, which is great to hear. And I get the sense that he is here for the long haul. I think he really likes playing in this league. And I just hope that the Ticats can open up the pocketbook a little bit to not make him think about going anywhere else. Harley says, come on, people, hit that like for the live call with Rick. We need more. Let's go. Cheers, Rick, and much love, brother. Harley, thank you very much. The Gnarled Branch says, loving the old football on the end of your shelf. Does it have a story? The entire shelf of Ticats gems is fantastic. Thank you so much for hosting the Fifth Quarter. Truly helps in times like this. So this is the old football. And yes, it is a very old football, a gift from a dear old friend, Steve Townsend, who I'm sure you read the story. It's from 1954, believe it or not. This football right here, 1954. It's as old as my mom, sitting behind me. And in fact, a lot of this stuff is from Steve and his mom, Barb, who, after Steve's passing, their wish was for me to have, a bunch of his things. And a lot of the things that you see on the shelf, I think most of the things are actually from Steve's room. And I'm utterly pleased and honored to be showcasing it as part of his legacy. So it's a football from 1954. And Steve was given this football by a friend, and he held it for decades until this past summer, in which he ended his life through MAID. A brave choice. And I really commended his bravery and his courage for doing what he did. But that's the story behind the football. And it was a gift to him 1954. That's a long time ago. It's CFL football. I mean, this is back from, the early days of the Tiger Cats, following the merger of the Tigers and the Hamilton Wildcats. That's a football from way back when. So yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if you have questions about the other stuff too, they all have stories. That is for sure. James says, how can the refund not get the game ball on a game where managed to call an illegal block penalty against the defense and an unnecessary roughing penalty for Katsantonis hitting Jamal Peters? I'm not sure I understand that, James. Let me read that again. How can the refund not get the game ball on a game where managed to call an illegal block penalty against the defense and an unnecessary roughness penalty against... Well, the Katsantonis hit on Jamal Peters, so that was an unnecessary roughness penalty against Katsantonis, who hit, I think it was Ontario Wilson of Winnipeg, but Peters was the guy who was trying to make the tackle as well and got the worst of the hit. So basically it was Katsantonis, Wilson, Peters, like bang, bang, bang. Peters got the worst of it. He did come back in the game, so I'm guessing he's fine. But I'm not sure I understand the other part of the question or the statement. So if you want to rephrase that and put it back in the chat, I'll certainly read it again. And maybe it's just my brain. It's probably not you. It's probably just me. Aaron says Cats hit the Winnipeg player in the head. Yeah, so his shoulder hit Wilson in the head, and then I think the domino effect is Peters got hit in the head as well, or the rib cage. It kind of seemed. Randy says current score BC 3, Calgary 0 in the first quarter. I can actually refresh my scoreboard and give you maybe even a more updated score between the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders. Still 3-0 BC. That went 5 minutes into the second quarter. We're all cheering for the Calgary Stampeders to get the job done. Email open, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Ashton on X, the handle is at Rick Zamperin, says Argos implosion will happen. That would be very pleasant to see. Argos losing out. I don't envision it. I don't see it coming. I'm not expecting it, but it would be awesome to see. No doubt about that. That would be awesome to see. James says, no, Jamal Peters got hit in the head by Cats. Jamal Peters plays for Hamilton. Okay, I think we can leave that debate to bed. Stuart says, thanks for continuing the fifth quarter. I thought it stopped when 900 CHML went off the air. So happy you're still doing it. Thanks, Rick. Stuart, thanks for the kudos. Yeah, you and everyone else watching or even watching later or listening on Spotify. This gets dropped on Spotify as well. You can subscribe to the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Again, there's other features throughout the week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday morning on my social feeds and, of course, on this channel as well, I'll have a very different kind of Ticats fan waking up after the Ticats' latest game. So tune into that on my socials. John says, defensive end Nick Usher, but that's it. What's your take on Menard? Casey Sales on defensive tackle, but I'm not convinced with Hendricks. You know what? Going into this season, John, I thought, he also says Ted Laurent come back, LMAO. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Going into the season, I thought the Ticats defensive line was the strength because at least you had some CFL experience coming into the equation with Hendricks and Barlow and Sales. Starting the season, Hendricks, Barlow with, some pretty good years with the Argonauts. Sales, we were getting there. So I thought, 3 out of the 4 is actually pretty good. And Usher has come on, especially in the second half of this season. So I thought going into the season, the D-line would be the strength for this Ticats team. And while I'm pretty comfortable in saying that is probably still the case, we need more out of that unit. And a lot more, to be honest. I was very hesitant in going all in terms of praising the linebacking core because they were all new guys, right? Simone retires. Javon Santos Knox gone. Chris Edwards not in the league anymore. And then you're, signing or trading for Jordan Williams. He retires at the start of training camp. And now you got Wilson there is kind of penciled in. They've had Hoyt there. They've had Wilborn there. They've had DQ Thomas there. They've had Moxie there. I mean, it's just been a mishmash of, who's going to work for this game, or can this guy catch fire, or can these guys play together and stop the run and the pass? They need to get better in the linebacking core. Absolutely need to get better in the linebacking core. And as for the secondary, you got Peters. He's not going anywhere. Signed throughout the the rest of next season. Katsantonis, I think, is a solid safety who's not going anywhere as well. I think Cameron Dantzler, if he can get a shot maybe in the last 2 weeks of this season, and if not, certainly bring him back for 2025. And you have Dantzler and Jamal Peters, and Jamal has stated that Cam is like him 2.0. You have them at the corners. Get a couple of good halves. Not sure the guys that they have are going to be the guys that are going to be here next year. In fact, I'd bet that they're probably going to be different. I think this defense kind of goes through a metamorphosis again in 2025. I think it has to. It's been the weak spot of this team. Special teams, apart from Constantino and Leggio, and yes, I'm looking at you, the return guys, not good enough at all. And paling in comparison in terms of past years. The Tyreek McAllisters, the Chris Williams of the worlds, the Speedy Banks, the Marcus Thigpens, all these guys that have been unbelievable kick and punt returners for many years. There was probably 15 years of unbelievable return guys for this Ticats franchise. Last couple of years, Frankie Williams, when he was doing it, I thought was doing a great job. Over the last couple of years, that's been a really hit and miss. And this season, more misses than anything. I mean, I can't really think of one return where I kind of jumped out of my seat apart from the Lawrence Woods punt return for a touchdown, which has been really the only highlight from a return standpoint. MST Adams in the chat says, the key Ticat players just didn't play their A game, dropped passes, interceptions thrown, and as usual, inability to tackle moving targets, i.e. Oliveira. Yeah, great statement. Brady Oliveira is an elusive guy, a powerful running back. He can roll over you. He can go around you. He can catch out of the backfield. Good blocker. I mean, he's probably now the leading candidate for MOP, in my opinion, I think. Brad says, Bernie Custis should have been on the wall long before they named the school after him. Player of the game, the fans at the game, they deserve something tonight. Fans, by the way, leading the player of the game, voting 6 votes now for the fans. 3 for Keandre Smith, 2 for Brady Oliveira. Brad, you are 1,000,000% right when you say Bernie Custis should have been on the Wall of Honor long before, years before that school was built. Bernie Custis, the first black quarterback in professional football. Think about that. That's pretty doggone cool. And he did it right here in Hamilton in the Canadian Football League. And he came up from Syracuse wearing 99, and he was electric. And ultimately got hurt in the later stages of his career, and he wasn't really that old when he did retire, but thought, his health was more important than anything else. And he had a phenomenal legacy on the field, and maybe even a better one off the field in terms of teaching the next generation of football players, recruiting players for the Ticats and other teams, coaching at other stops, including McMaster University, being a principal for 3+ decades in this community. And even with all of that, was such an amazing individual. I recall so many practices that I went to at Ivor Wynne Stadium where Bernie Custis and Ron Lancaster would be sitting side by side, and sometimes joined by Angelo Mosca, who from time to time would go to the stadium. Those 3 guys, Lancaster, Mosca, Custis, and Ray Jones sometimes would show up as well, the old trainer. Then you have John Salavanis there as well, and it was just a riot, an absolute riot. The stories that they would tell, the fun that they would have, the laughs that they would share, priceless. Absolutely priceless. I wish I could just turn back the clock, rewind the tape, relive it all over again. And thankfully, I was there to digest it and take for it what it was. It was an absolute pleasure for me to be there all those times that those guys would huddle together and talk about the good old times. Oh, and the tough times too. I mean, it wasn't always lollipops and rainbows. They had some serious conversations as well. John says, Bridges will give, we will give you what you want. Tim White got this year. Tim White will get your starting contract, LMAO. And Richard says, Lawrence Woods got hit in the head on the return and nothing called on that. I'll have to review that one. But Yeah, I don't not believe you, that's for sure. Officials missed a few tonight. They missed a few tonight. Ken says, I think refund was supposed to say referee. Okay, Ken, I'm going to go back to your comment a little higher and read that again with referee instead of refund. Bear with me, folks. Geez, I think I went too far. Sorry. Let's move on. Sorry, now that I've lost my place in the chat, which, by the way, thank you so much for contributing. And Ken, I'll get to it. You know what? I'll make it part of my sober second thought. How about that on Tuesday? Richard said, the fans are my player of the game for today. Good vote. Fans stuck it out. There was an announced crowd of 22,000 plus. Not sure I believe that number, but it is what it is. Lance, his subject line on the email, fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Lance writes, good evening, Rick. Was a tough watch at the donut box this evening. The energy just wasn't there, and I didn't see any desperation from our players. Good point. That Tim White drop, which he had both hands on, really hurt. That is a must catch. Winnipeg is still the class of the league, and they proved it once again in front of our faces. We are just not good enough this season. I don't feel we deserve a playoff opportunity. Player of the game for me is Nick Constantino. He really is an elite punter already and rarely fails to deliver. It's an underrated position, and we have found a gem. Wonder if any moves happen during our bye week. Should be interesting, as planning for next season needs to start now. Thanks for everything you do, Rick, and I'm looking forward to our final home game because it will be a good party, if nothing else. Highlight of the season, beating the Argos all 3 times. This is enough reason to still smile. Lance in Stony Creek. Yes, those 3 games, sweeping the Argonauts this season. That was a lot of fun. That was a tremendous amount of fun, to be honest. You can reach me on the show here, Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube through the link in the chat. If you don't see it, let me know and I'll repost it. You can email fifthquartershow@gmail.com. Vote for your player of the game. Let's talk about tonight's game, a 31-10 loss for the Tiger Cats at the hands of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, in which not a lot went right for the Tiger Cats, including Bo Levi Mitchell. The Boveralls era, I think, is done. The streak's over. 4-game win streak has been snapped. I think the Boveralls have been put to bed for good. 15 of 28 tonight, 217 yards, 0 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions for Bo. And I'm sure he's going to look at the video and the film and think, I could have been better. And yep, that's probably a fair statement. It could have been better for sure. Brad says we need 6 or 7 more guys like Stavros. If we keep Chris Jones, I'm sure he will have a say in our 2025 defense. Well, there's another guy as well. I know we've been talking about the players for 2025. Chris Jones, I think, is a guy that Scott Milanovic, Ed Hervey, the GM of this team, Orlando Steinauer, the president of football operations, I think they have to say Chris Jones has proven himself to be the defensive coordinator here. Right now, he's a senior defensive assistant, and I get it. He's still being paid by Edmonton. But I think you make this guy the DC. Unless he gets a head coaching opportunity somewhere else, you know, what else is he going to do? Right? He's not going to go be a DC, I don't think, somewhere else. I think he's invested in these guys. I think he wants to make this team defensively a much better team. And I think he has. Tonight just wasn't their night. And not every night is going to be their night, especially with the talent level that we have. It's got to be better. We got to get a lot more talent, or even a little bit more talent on this field. I think defensively now, compared to when we started the season, like night and day. Night and day. They're way more cohesive. I know they kind of dumbed it down or simplified what they were doing. A lot more trust, a lot more reactive as opposed to waiting for things to happen. This D is at least going in the right direction. But they need more pieces. They need more pieces to be a playoff and Grey Cup contender. I think it's a fair statement, right? Ken says, not quite as far back as the memorabilia on the shelf, but anyone remember Lewis Porter? He was great. John says, Smoke Harris didn't look too bad. Now, Smoke, he's got some explosiveness, but never really broke a big return, right? Same for Bird as well. I mean, other than the TD that Lawrence Woods had, the return game has been a poop show all season long. Let's call it a spade a spade. It has not been good enough. Alan says, let's bring back the old logo and Hell's Bells playing for player intros again. Peter says about the men's urinals. Some bathrooms, like the ones behind 114, don't have urinals, so they can be used as men's or women's, depending on the event hosted. I didn't know that, Peter. Thanks for the info. That's good. Paul says no D equals no win. Brad says we at the Cat's Claws put Custis on the Wall of Fame back in 1998. And Harley says, I agree with Alan. Let's bring back the old logo and we'll bring back championships to the Hammer. Now there's something I didn't really think about, but it's 100% true. Ever since this team got the new logo, there's no championships. Now there was a time where the team still had the old logo and was not winning championships, but that was only 99 to 03. Like the new logo came in 04, 05? 05, I think it was. Yeah, so maybe that is the key to unlock everything. It's getting the old logo back. They should do the old logo for maybe even a retro night, or maybe on Labor Day, do the old logo. Do the Hell's Bells, the whole bit. Joshua on the chat says it's time for the Hamilton Tiger Cats to recognize the importance of a cohesive coaching staff. A team that understands and supports one another can create a more effective game plan and foster a stronger connection with the players. Building that unity is essential for achieving success on the field. Joshua, I could not have said it any better. You need a cohesive coaching staff that would, morph into a cohesive team. If you don't have the right pieces in the coaching staff, I don't think you're ever going to have the right pieces in place on the field. Harley says, last comment, Rick, we can talk Tiger Cats football for hours. Absolutely we can. And Brad says, no more silver uniforms. I think you mean the slate gray. Is that the official terminology in terms of the gray colored uniforms? I'm not a big fan of them. Up close, they look nice. From the 7th floor, Tim Hortons Field, it's all a blur. I'm sure if you're in the last few rows of Tim Hortons Field, you're probably thinking the same thing. Well, it was a night in which the Tiger Cats just could not get anything right going, only mustered 10 points in a 31-10 loss. 4-game winning streak is over. Winnipeg on an 8-game heater. They've clinched a home playoff game. Ticats not only have some work to do, they got to win their last 2. They need Toronto and BC and Saskatchewan to lose out and take care of their own business, and then they'll get into the playoffs. But this one hurt tonight, no doubt about it. Next game for us is that game against Calgary at Tim Hortons Field. It is October the 18th, and it is a game that the Tiger Cats will hopefully go into with still a chance to make the playoffs. That would be a phenomenal, phenomenal feeling. Brad also wants the old center field logo to be brought back. That would be great. John, on the future, Toronto gets slaughtered in the playoffs and Montreal gets the Grey Cup. Winnipeg will be there also. So Montreal over Winnipeg again. Wow, that would be quite the party in BC. And Brad says defend the logo. Absolutely. I don't think the logo at Tim Hortons Field is big enough. I think we need a giant Tiger Cats logo at center field. That's what I'm saying. Hey, thanks to all who contributed to the show. It's always fun to do this, and we're going to get to do it at least a couple more times. Player of the game voted by you, the fans, tonight are you, the fans, those who stuck it out at Tim Hortons Field in a brief rain before the game and endured what was a loss tonight at the hands of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Thanks to all who contributed in the chat, on email. Big Ticats fan for calling in once again. My name's Rick Zamperin. Check out my social feeds on Monday at Rick Zamperin on TikTok and Instagram. Of course, on YouTube as well. Facebook for Ticats fans waking up. Of course, on Tuesdays, Sober Second Thoughts, my look back at the latest Ticats game. And on Thursday, picks, props, and predictions, looking at the sports betting field. John says, hoping BC wins the cup, though Hamilton is not there. And Brad says, all hail Rick. Thank you, Brad. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. We are back on October the 18th, Tiger Cats and Stampeders, and hopefully still looking for a playoff spot. Have a great night, and thanks for tuning in to the Fifth Quarter Show on YouTube.